Good morning, everyone. I am going to talk to you today about one of my authors that I really like hearing and seeing talk about is Christopher Paul Curtis. The first time I ever heard him was at the Michigan Council of Teachers of English. He was just getting ready to publish one of his new books that was Bucking the Sarge, and he read a chapter from it and I laughed so hard I cried. It was so funny, and just the way he talked was so hilarious. So, ever since then, anytime I go to a conference, I like to try and hear him speak if he is speaking there. So, Christopher Paul Curtis grew up in Flint, Michigan. And after high school, he went to work at the Fisher Body Plant number 1, and he worked the assembly line over there, putting on doors on cars on the General Motors. This is when he started his writing. He had made a system with one of his co-workers that was also putting on doors, and they had these breaks that they were able to do, so he had huge breaks, so he would be sitting down and he started writing. And this is the time that, if I'm not mistaken, that he wrote The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963. And from what I recall, it took him a long time to actually get this published. But he did actually return to school, and he attended the University of Michigan Flint, which is also the same school I went to, but he had gone there many years before me. When he's presenting at conferences, he does share many of his stories from when he was a child, and many of these stories have actually made it into his books that he has written, which makes it even more hilarious knowing that he actually did some of these things. Right now I'm going to share a video with you of him speaking about one of his new books that he has coming out, The Journey of Little Charlie.
The Journey of Little Charlie is the story of a white boy from South Carolina who is the son of sharecroppers. And it starts out in South Carolina, and he works with his mother and his father. It originally started, I was going to do it as two different narrators. As the story went on and as I got more into it and got more writing, little Charlie just said, nope, I'm not sharing this book with anybody. This is my book. You have kind of aspirational hopes, and then you have realistic hopes. I hope that they will pick up a history book and try to understand the perspective of the sharecroppers and realize how horrible slavery was and how horrible it is to devalue another person to the point where they're an animal. And with little Charlie's journey, what I hope they find is that your character is not set in stone. Who you are is not set in stone. You can grow, and you should grow. You should work on growing and becoming better and trying to improve yourself. And just because people around you, older people around you are a certain way, doesn't mean that you have to be that way. You can change. You can take a point of view that's different.
Yes, so listening to him talk there, it's very different. The first time I saw him, he had these long dreadlocks going. Now his hair is very short, very different. So I'm going to talk about a few of the books that I have read myself. And as you will see through here, many of these, this is a Newbery Medal winner that he wrote. Bud Not Buddies, a Coretta Scott King Award. Bucking the Sarge, I don't see any awards on that one. Newbery Award. The Watsons Go to Birmingham, again, Coretta Scott King Award. That's the first one I'm going to talk about that I have, and I just kind of warn. It starts out with an African American family, of course, in Flint, 1963. Starts out with this snowstorm, and the two boys have to go out and clean the car off because they have to go to their aunt's house because the furnace isn't working. So, and of course, there's the antics that happen out there, and the one gets stuck to the car, the older boy, Byron, who, as he refers to even on the book, is a juvenile delinquent. And of course, you're laughing as the mother gets him unstuck from the car. But the book is told from the middle son's perspective. His name is Kenny. And then there is a younger sister, Joetta. And due to all of Byron's antics that you hear about in here going on, the parents decide to take him to Birmingham, Alabama to stay with the mother's mother, so his grandmother, which of course is in 1963, and it happens to coincide with the church bombing that happened where the 4 young ladies were killed. That was Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley. And that happened, he also has it right in here, acknowledgments in memory of, he has right here all their names, their birth dates, and the 9/15 of 1963, the day that that bombing had happened. And so it was a very good book that he was able to straddle the line of having those very funny parts with a very serious incident that happened in history. And the first time I had heard about this book at all was when I was working at Whittier Junior High over in Flint, Michigan. They were having a whole district sponsored reading where every grade and class was supposed to read a certain book. The 8th graders were reading this book, and they had to spend 200.3 minutes reading. So in honor of 2003. That was kind of a neat thing. Unfortunately, I didn't get to participate. I had college classes, so I didn't get to be at the school when they were doing that because I really wanted to be there for that. So another book I've read is Bucking the Sarge. Again, when he read that one chapter, it wasn't as funny as when I actually read it, but when he read it, it was hilarious. But again, it's based in Flint, and it's about a teenager whose mother runs slum housing and group homes and even has her son running one of the group homes. He's about 14, and she managed to get him a driver's license so that he could actually drive cars to work for the housing. And so she's able to find all the little things to milk the system, to manipulate things, and she doesn't really care who she hurts in the process, even if she's hurting her own son. And he has a friend named Sparky, and Sparky is always out to try and find the quick, easy money, even by trying to sue somebody. So they contact this lawyer, and they try to find ways, Sparky does, to sue anyone he can. And he even tries to sue Taco Bell, and that was this chapter that the author read to the group. And it was hilarious of just envisioning those old tiles flying off of the Taco Bell roof during a windstorm, and this kid getting knocked in the head. And I could even smell when they talked about pine saw in that chapter, about the pine saw. I suggest you read it because it was hilarious, especially when you get to that part. So then I've also read Elijah of Buxton. I'll come here. So Elijah of Buxton was a very informative story for me. I had no idea till I read it that there is a city in Ontario, Canada called Buxton, and it was created by escaped slaves. And again, you can see here, it's won the Coretta Scott King Award, and that looks like it's the Newbery Award also. So, Newbery Award. So many awards here. And it's all about Elijah. He was actually born free. His parents had been slaves, but it was born free. It says he's 11 years old, and he ends up getting with another slave who was trying to earn money so he can buy his family's freedom and bring them to Buxton to live with them. And ends up with his money stolen, so Elijah goes and helps him try to get his money back, and actually comes over to Detroit, Michigan, trying to help, which puts him at major risk of possibly being taken as a slave just because of the color of his skin back to the South, because slave traders and the people going and hunting them did not care. They would just take anybody that they could. So then there is a sequel to the book that takes place 40 years later. But even in the back of the book, the author has a timeline about it. He even has a history back here, a brief history about the settlement, which to me was very informative. And I had, like I say, I had no idea that this place had existed, how it had started. And it was just, to me, a wonderful read. There is this next one, The Madman of Penny Woods, that sounds very good to me also. It takes place 40 years after the Buxton, Elijah Buxton book. So it takes place in the same city. I do have a copy of The Mighty Miss Malone, and I have not read it at this time, but it is one that maybe while we're going through this whole process of working from home, I might get out and start reading. Christopher Paul Curtis's books are very good to read, seem to go very fast. I get hooked in them and can't seem to stop. And now that I hear about this newest book that he has, I'll come up here to the top, The Journey of Little Charlie. I'm kind of anxious to really get into this one and compare it, since it is dealing with right in the whole slavery era, with another author's book that she had and talked about slavery within hers. So that's Sharon Draper, that she wrote a book about it and came from a female perspective of somebody who was brought over right from Africa. So I'd like to do a little comparison and see how these two compare. So I do hope you enjoyed hearing the stories about a Michigan author that we have, and maybe you'll pick up one of his books and give it a little read, and maybe a little cry like I've done, and hopefully a nice major laugh. All right, thanks everybody. Have a good day.